and welcome to the seventh episode of Papa Tom's Take. Yeah, there was some confusion about the number of episodes, but this is episode seven, and the title is March to Fascism, question mark, and it kind of builds on the discussion that I presented in episode six, which was based on Senator Chris Murphy's discussion of the movement towards an authoritarian form of government. And so this discussion really focuses on one option, if you will, of that process. And as you can see, I have a guest today, and in just a moment I'm going to ask him to introduce himself. And he brings probably unique is a word that's overused. I won't say a unique perspective, but a very interesting perspective of how fascism took over Germany in the 1930s, and then together we're going to draw some parallels. He's given some presentations on this subject in different venues, and although to be honest, I haven't seen the whole presentation. He has shared his PowerPoint, and it's a very interesting, and I think you'll find an interesting discussion. So, would you tell us a little bit about your background, where you were born, how you got to the United States, and your recent citizenship application and achieving?
Okay, well, Tom, thanks for the invitation. I appreciate that. And my name is Horst Siffrin. Yeah, Horst is an old-fashioned German name. It's not very much used anymore. But so some people have a problem with that to pronounce it. So you're in good company if you can't. And I'm born in Germany in the post-war time in 1957, 12 years after the war was over. And I grew up there, grew up in a middle class family in a town, an area close to the French border, the smallest German state that actually was occupied still by France when I was born. So technically, I could say I'm born in France, but that's really not true. Yeah? And I went to school there. I was fortunate enough to grow up during a time when the German school system was newly established. Higher education was supported. So I was able to go to college, get an engineering degree. And then after I joined, became a chemical engineer and worked for Bayer. It's a German company. They're mostly known for aspirin, although they don't make that anymore. And they gave me the opportunity for a few years to come to the United States. So my family and I moved over here in the early 90s, and I have never gone back. Yeah, so that's how I got into the United States. I still have close ties to Germany. And a few years ago, I applied for American citizenship. Yeah, they granted me that. Glad about that. So right now, I'm an American citizen with a secondary citizenship of Germany, and I like to travel between those two worlds, if you can say that.
When you were growing up, was your town, your village, pretty much recovered from the war, or was there still evidence of uh, ruins and so forth?
My village where I grew up is a too small town. They had about 5,000, 6,000 people. So there was not a lot of damage there. Some was there, and they are simple houses. And my parents pointed out to me some of them who had been bombed, but it was nothing like the big cities. So the cities, there was the closest city was like 10 miles away. There was still significant damage visible. Our capital, was about 20 miles to drive there. There was the main city, and it's called Saarbrücken. It's close to the French border. Yeah, I remember seeing the ruins there still into the 1960s, early 1970s, yeah, until the last of the ruins were torn down. I would say the most of the the rebuilding of Germany had already, most of it has already happened. People had houses, but everywhere you went, you saw new construction sites, new developments, new things where people started to get their feet on the ground.
I want to come back to your experiences growing up in Germany in a few minutes, but I'm going to do my best to share a screen that will pull up one of the slides from your presentation that you and I have talked about
Mhm.
briefly before, but I find very interesting. So bear with me and see if I can work this technology to get it to share the screen. Oh, it's the wrong thing. Oh my. Wait a minute, I can do this. There. That's the slide.
Okay, yeah,
That wasn't too much technological difficulty.
okay.
Now, this slide, well, let me just have you go ahead and explain this slide and then we can chat about it for a second.
Okay, the slide actually shows the election results in Germany after the after World War One to from 1919, which was the first year that Germany actually became a republic, and with three elections. There were elections before, but those elections did not result in it was not for the government to elect, but it was just a parliament that had consulting power, but not real power. So in 1918, after Germany lost the World War, the German emperor resigned, and Germany became a republic. And what you can see there, each of these lines is an election, a federal election in Germany with the different parties. And in the German election system, I have to say that it's a little bit different from here. We don't have a simple majority system. We have a representative system. So if your party gets 20% of the vote, you're going to have 20% of the representatives in the parliament. So, and then you can and this color coded thing, actually got that from a German historical site. It shows the percentage. It doesn't show the absolute votes here, but it has an interesting story to tell. On the right side, you can see I made three groups there: the nationalists and the monarchists, the Catholics and the workers. Yeah, so that's it's pretty simplified, but it essentially captures what was going on in the German electorate. The um, the the after the after the end of World War One, Germany, the ruling classes, the elites, were coming out of a hierarchical system, out of a monarchy, and they had their advantages of those. They knew how to rule, and they did not like the republic. So and those people are in the upper section, like when you look on the left side, yeah, there's the blue one, the DNVP, the DVP, the BVP. P means party in Germany. They're all some kind of nationalist party in Germany. So they have the same electorate. Then there's the center. What they call the center is mostly the Catholic party. And then you have below that the red and the communists. Yeah. So the Red Party is the Social Democrats, and the lower one is the KPD, the Communist Party of Germany. So they are the workers. And what happened here is what you can see over the years from the 1919 to 19, let's say 1928, there were several elections, and the attempt of the German ruling elites was to keep the workers' parties out of power. That was simply put it. Yeah, so, and they had a way to do that. The German president had the power to um, to announce an emergency. Yeah, and here comes the first parallelism. But his power was really, it was intended to be for a national emergency. So the president could declare a national emergency and discontinue all civil rights for 30 days. And within that time, he had to present it to the parliament and had to reschedule elections. So those are the elections that happened in the time from 1919 to 1928. The hope was that the nationalist parties would gain more seats, so they could really dictate what was going on, but that did not happen. So, and which in short proved or showed to the German population that this government was not effective. They couldn't get anything done. They were fighting amongst each other, and the workers' parties, the SPD and the KPD, were consistently kept out of the government. Now, in this situation, the Nationalist Party, the Nazi Party, became more popular. Nazi Party existed since the early 1920s, but they had no impact. Now they basically said, "Hey, we are here. We agree with you all. Yeah, we don't have a efficient government. We're going to fix that. Vote for us."
Let me ask a quick question. At what point was Hitler a major force in that party? Was it right from the very beginning, or closer to 1932?
Hitler was a major force in that party from the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, so no other way to put it. Yeah. There were other leaders there, so he voted some of the old elites, like the military, yeah, and there was like the president of Germany for the most of the time. He was Paul von Hindenburg. He was a general of World War One, so he had some popularity. He had to work with this guy to do what he wanted to do. That's a story in itself. So that's quite an interesting story by itself. But anyhow, so in the in the votes of 1930, 1932, there were two votes in 1932. The Nazis gradually became a more powerful party. They were still not able to rule to form a government because the nationalists, the elites, didn't trust them. So they did not want to do. They did not want Hitler to become the chief of the government of the German government. In 1933, there was another election, and the Nazis became the strongest party, which really gave them more power to ask, we need to be head of government. And the Hindenburg and the German the nationalist elites gave in and said, okay, we make him a chancellor, and we can keep this guy under control. And the only reason really was not to give the power to the workers' parties. When you look at a slide over here, it looks like they are, when you're going from left to right, the percentage of the different parties, like of the upper parties, the blue one, and the starting with the D, those are the nationalist parties, kept going down. But it also appears like the Workers' Party was going down, especially in 1933. That's actually not the case. They had less percentage, but the total votes, there was about 11 million people voting for the two parties, for SPD and KPD, for the Workers' Parties, all through that time. So the total votes were actually the same, and sometimes it's been said that the German working parties moved over to Hitler. That actually is not true. So very little migration from the workers' parties to the nationalists happened during that time. But most of the nationalist parties moved into the Nazi Party, and the Nazi Party actually gained more voters in 1933. 1933 had the highest participation, the voters' participation in Germany. Until that time, it was over 80%. It was unbelievable.
So, to be clear, the Nazis came to power. They at that point they were still in the minority. They didn't win a landslide victory to take over the government. Correct?
Well, they had 43%. That's nothing to sneeze at. So they were the strongest party.
Yeah, yes.
But it did not have the absolute majority. That is correct.
Okay. All right. I want to go to then your next slide on your presentation, which I think for me, this kind of launches the discussion that I want to have for the focus for today, parallels that might be seen. Uh, Take us through these 2 months.
Yeah.
I was startled when I saw that slide, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, those are especially the lead into the next slides, but I can talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, well, you want me to go forward?
Yes.
Okay.
The so there was in 1933. What the one thing that we cannot forget in the propaganda of the Nazis was they were against the Jews, so it was an anti-Semitic propaganda, and they were anti-Bolshevist. Bolshevist meaning the the rulers of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had just been established at the end of World War One, so this was quite fresh. So, and for the Nazi propaganda, the Bolshevists and the Jews were the same thing. You know, there's the Jewish Bolshevism. That's what they called it. Now, they had the propaganda was we have to avoid at all costs that any of these people come to power. Now, I said earlier the that Germany had at the time there was a paragraph 48, the emergency situation that allowed the president of the republic to uh, uh, suspend civil liberties. And right within a month after Hitler got elected, I don't know exactly the time, something terrible happened in Germany. The Reichstag, which is like the Congress, the building of where the German parliament met, caught on fire and burned down. And to this, we know who set the fire, but it is still unclear why there was a guy he was a guest worker from the Netherlands, and why he was able to put the entire Reichstag on fire. Yeah, that should not have been possible. But it came as an opportunity to Hitler, who went out and said, "Okay, this is done by the communists. The communist war has begun, and we need to do something." And he convinced Hindenburg, the vice president, to invoke the Article 48 and suspend civil liberties. With that, Hitler was able to imprison, to arrest everybody he wanted. He was the head of government, and that's what he did. The night after you can think about this, yeah, the night after the Article 48, the suspension of civil liberties, was invoked, all communist delegates and critical journalists were arrested and imprisoned. They were all gone. So, and so they were prepared for this. Yes, yes, you don't do something like this overnight, yeah, and be successful. The new elections were made a week later. Nazi became the strongest party, and Hitler wanted to. That's where he was successful. He wanted to he wanted to dictate what was going on. The Nazis became the strongest party, and they wanted to change the constitution. So now a change of the constitution required a two-thirds majority, which he didn't have. But because all the communists and a large amount of the social democrats were in prison, the president of the parliament, Nazis being the biggest party, made a change of rule, and he declared that the absent delegates would be would be considered present. If they're missing unexcused, they were present. So they their vote would not count, but it would count as present. So they had a quorum, and the Nazis and the Central, the Catholics here, voted for a new law that's called the Enabling Act. Yeah, and it's the Enabling Act is actually a little bit tame. Yeah, what the Germans call it would be the Empowerment Act or something like this. And what is really called, as the right wings do that, or they disguise their power grab to find wordings. Like it was called the law to remedy the hardship of the people in the empire. And on that slide is actually the original publication. It's only like 1 page long, and it states the government may enact laws. So the government can make laws. The laws can deviate from the constitution, and treaties with other countries do not require the approval of the parliament. Those are basically the three main parts of that law. And with that law, he had absolute power.
So there's a lot of parallels growing out of this. But before I stop the screen sharing, are there other slides that you think are pertinent that we should talk about before we go on?
Let me see. Not really. Well, I'm going over into a recap and then the fascism, the racial nationalism, and talk a little bit about that. So I don't know if how much you want to go into this. There's a lot of things here that can be talked about, but when we don't have the time. You can spend 2 or 3 hours on this, yeah, and still not.
Yeah, yeah. Why don't we just talk a little bit, and as we've kind of discussed ahead of time, we might do a follow up where you basically go through this whole presentation. But I think there's already a lot for us to chew on, so I'm going to try to stop the screen sharing, and then you and I can just talk.
Okay. All right. Let me just say one of the messages I wanted to get out here with this presentation is there is often a perception, a misperception among people who didn't grow up in Germany or don't live in Germany that Hitler's rise to power was a coup, that it was obtained, that he obtained power by force, and that it was unavoidable. Both of those perceptions are wrong. For looking quickly at the German laws at the time, his rise to power was perfectly legal, and
Yep.
even to the last moment, yeah, it was avoidable. If some of the traditional parties, or like say the Center Party, had not voted with him, he would not have been able to pass that enabling act.
Mhm.
So it boiled down really to do you have the guts to say no? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Let me go back a little bit to your childhood and growing up in Germany, and I don't want you to feel that I'm trying to invade your family or privacy. But what did you hear from your parents or adults around you in terms of what they were thinking during the time that the Nazis were in power? We've heard that some people in the military and so forth would simply say they were following orders, or uh, were there people that recognized that things were not as they should be? What was
Yeah.
what did you hear growing up as a child?
But I mean, I grew up at a time where a lot of the Nazis, like the low-level Nazis, were still there. You knew from some people, okay, he was part of the SS, the Hitler private army, or this guy, he uh, uh, he got hurt, and most of it was about the war, actually. Yeah, what I can. So you got to imagine, yeah, the people. My dad was 16 years old when the war was over, and what the people were concerned was basically finishing out to rebuild after the country was destroyed. That's what you heard. The stories I heard was what happened during the war, especially during the time when the Allies moved into Germany. What did they do? What happened? Yeah, and so there was a lot of that stuff. But when I grew older, it was the Nazi regime was an important part of our history education. being a nationalist or even a patriot in Germany at that time, was absolutely no. You can't. It's not forbidden, but it's almost like you're sympathizing with the Nazis. And the main thing that was really talked about in Nazis was the Holocaust. How did that happen? And people knew, from what I heard from my parents, that there were Jewish families living in our small town, and they were picked up, and nobody really knew where they were going. If they knew, they didn't ask. Because my dad left me a little book for my sister and I, we budgeting. I had all these stories. And so, what happened during that time, his youth, during that, how he grew up? Yeah, and he said, he once went to his mom and asked him, what's happening here? It was like, and he was like 10 years old or so, and said, where are all these people going? What they're doing with them? And she has said, you never talk about this. Don't talk about this. Don't ask anybody about this. We don't know where they're going. And they didn't want to. So they had probably suspicions that that was not good. I mean, the official propaganda was that the Jews need to disappear and they're going to go to another country or they're going to Palestine and stuff like this. Yeah. So in reality, when I look at it, I would say it was a nice excuse. You didn't have you didn't have to do something about it. You just gave yourself, I don't want to be bothered with that.
Yeah, and it's easy to look at it from hindsight and also through the communication and technology that we have today, but that wasn't in place. And so the ability to have people with their cell phones recording these trains or whatever, that didn't exist back then.
Did not
Well,
exist.
so let's talk about today. What are the parallels that you see from your vantage point between the 30s in Germany and what's going on in the U.S. today?
Um, there's so many. Yeah. Um, the the one thing that I see is the the fear and the dissatisfaction of a large part of the population, of the electorate, and that happened in Germany in 1920s, and there are the willingness of those people to accept limitations to their freedom for a higher cause, for a so-called higher cause. Yeah, and keep in mind also in Germany at the time, uh, the democratic process was brand new. The Germans who were in at voting age at the time, they grew up in a monarchy, so they are used. They just came out of a war also, yeah? So they are used to live in an environment where they were being told what to do. So that's so the 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 government telling you you have to do this and you have to do that and you cannot do this was something that they were kind of used to. Yeah, so it was nothing new. Yeah, so there was not this flaming sort of freedom that went across the country. That happened in the big cities, yes, but not on the countryside. Yeah. The other thing I see is that's a very big parallel. It's an imaginary enemy. The Jewish people were the enemy, and there was a latent anti-Semitism in Germany and an entire Europe for for centuries. Yeah, it was not an anti-Semitism that they were enemies, but they were different. And they didn't go to the church. They had their own stuff going on. Sometimes you don't know. They had these weird conspiracy theories about what Jewish people were doing. So they kind of were there, but they lived a separate life. And the Nazi regime showed them as the enemy. What I'm seeing here is the same thing. You have the enemy are the immigrants. So you have it's people are sometimes a lot too focused on anti-Semitism. Actually, anti-Semitism right now in the United States, I see, is turned on its head from what I'm seeing. Yeah, what Trump and the MAGA Republicans call anti-Semitic is actually not. It's the opposite. Yeah? It's they are trying. Anti-Semitic is support to criticize Israel, the state of Israel, for what they're doing with the Palestinians. So, but the enemy, the big enemy, is the here in the country are the undocumented immigrants or immigrants at all. Yeah, so we have an imaginary enemy. We know the numbers don't justify that the United States has more benefit from the immigrants, and the propaganda that we pay for them and they drain our resources is totally wrong. But it's something that people believe.
And one of the things I picked up from your presentation is the declaration of emergency, and that there seems to be a parallel there because much of what the Trump administration is doing, they're invoking emergency powers, crisis, emergency at the border, and therefore you send troops. And a trade imbalance. And so, even though tariffs are the purview of the Congress, Trump basically takes that over because of an emergency. And the most immediate example of that, and I don't want to put you on the spot if you haven't read about it, but Trump has taken over the police department of Washington, D.C.,
Mhm.
declaring emergency powers, which, by the way, because of D.C.'s status of not being a state and so on, that he has that power for 48 hours, but there needs to be an emergency. And there's a discrepancy about what he's calling an emergency. So, use of emergency is another, I think, parallel.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, that's the main parallel. That's the only way you actually can do that. All autocrats in the history of any country have done the same thing. They declare an emergency. The And all these emergency laws, when I look at them, they have good reason, but they have one premise. They are under the assumption that the people who have the power to declare the emergency will do so in good faith.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. I often think about the founding fathers back then. The notion of a man's honor was like a huge, big deal, and they probably couldn't conceive of politicians, not just the president, lots of politicians, basically performing without honor. They're not honorable men and women, and the founding fathers just couldn't conceive of that, I think.
yep, I agree with you. Yeah, I don't know about the founding fathers. Well, they had their own problems, but their goal was clearly, yeah, to build on an honor code, but
Yeah.
also to build in checks and balances that are difficult to overcome. What we're seeing right now is, and there's another parallel between Germany at that time and here, is a Congress, a Republican Party, who basically cedes its power to the president. And they don't. It's not even that they cede their power; they're just not doing their job. They just
And,
not do it. Yeah,
and,
and the same thing happened in Germany during for this enabling act. Now, people who had the power, who had the voting power to stop this, did not do that.
and it's interesting, comment you made about arresting members of a party, but then using them to say that since they're in jail in the city, the quorum is still met. What I thought about then was Texas. Maybe Texas will just arrest all the Democrats and declare a quorum because they're in the state in jail. That
Yep, let's
that
do
that
that.
would be
That's in the state.
that
Yeah.
would be a terrible parallel. But
Well, the method, the playbook is the same.
yep. Now I want to go off on kind of a different tangent in the few minutes that we have left. I did a little bit of research and found that the Gestapo started with a very small number of men. and gradually over the years grew larger in numbers and more powerful and more fearful. And I wonder if you see that ICE, some members of ICE would be so enthusiastic about their job that 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 could turn into a Gestapo kind of thing, because they are relying on intimidation and fear and so forth, and they go in to get these undocumented people with firearms and automatic weapons and so forth. It seems to me that there are some parallels there.
Well, the method is basically you establish fear of the police, whoever that is. Yeah, the Gestapo is, Gestapo means a secret state police. That's the acronym for that. So they were not a uniform police. They were like an FBI kind of thing, but their goal was to ensure that Germans followed the nationalist, the Nazi agenda. And the Gestapo people were known, and they were feared, and they were not. From what I gather, yeah, they were not they were not total idiots. So they had some education, some training, but they were sent out, and they were known, and they were there for to be present, to make people fear. With ICE, I think it's the ICE is more like the SA, like the private army of Hitler. I don't know where these people are coming from, but what they have in common, a large part of this appeals to people who enjoy doing that, enjoying to be bullies and to be a to have the satisfaction of spreading fear among the people they deal with. I'm not saying everybody is that
Yeah,
level.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm not talking about individual, but that's the culture.
Yeah, it's not hard in my mind. It's not hard to imagine that if you have 10,000 ICE agents, field in the field kind of people, and I don't know if that's a reasonable number one way or the other. But if you have 10,000, it's not hard to imagine that 20 or 30 of them are just really thriving on this intimidation and bullying, being able to be the bully of the pack.
No, yeah,
That's not
sure.
hard to imagine.
Yeah, well, it's not hard to imagine, and also can imagine that the reputation that ICE has already, yeah, is it's going to appeal more to people who have that personality trait.
Yeah, yeah. And there was a number that I read in a document from the Homeland Security that indicated that there were approximately 650,000 convicted felons who were non-citizens, and that's important because they didn't say they were undocumented. They said they were non-citizens,
Uh-huh.
and you know, for me, that would have been a place to start if you're going to round up people. But taking work, taking somebody as they're coming out of court where they were required to come to make their case for asylum or whatever. That's just, they're not criminal. They're not the rapists and the murderers that were, were were advertised in during the campaign, and as you said, making up fear of an enemy.
That's exactly the way it is. I'm not sure if you had time to look at this, but when you go on the webpage of ICE, you can see how many people they have in custody, and how many are criminals, how many are have no criminal record. They have these four categories, and 80% of them they have in custody in Ohio and across the United States, I guess, have no criminal record.
Yeah, and in fact, it's complicated because if simply your caught without documentation, that's considered a civil offense. It's not criminal. So
Right.
you can't get a criminal record from just being undocumented.
But,
Um,
if I can chime in on that, but that's part of the system,
yeah,
because you can criminalize them. That's what they're going to try to do, in my opinion.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
in Germany, what happened at the time, the Jews were not criminals. They
Yeah.
were not, being a Jew was not criminal, yeah, but they were gradually moving over to that side over the years until they were first. The major step was they were not allowed to do business anymore. Then
Hmm.
they lost their German citizenship.
Hmm.
They were considered a foreigner, yeah, even if they had been born and grown up in this country. And when the war started, then they were considered enemies.
Hmm.
So they were like spies, yeah, and they were, from that moment on, they were criminalized, and that was the justification to round them up.
Well, I'm looking at my timer, and time goes fast when you're having an interesting conversation, which this was for me. I hope it was for you. Are there any other points that you'd like to make that my questions haven't led you into on this subject? Remember, the title of this is "March to Fascism?" Question mark.
That's
So, other points that you'd like to make?
one thing that is actually not in my presentation, but that came to me in the last few weeks when I thought about it. The way the Trump administration is changing the government agencies, and in some cases throwing out entire departments and things like that, and that appears to be counterproductive, because you need these people to do work. Now, in Germany, they had the same problem. So you cannot get rid of an entire bureaucratic system without collapsing the state. So they need to do that. The only thing you need to do is you need to put one of your followers, only one, in each department. If that person, everybody else stays there, they have to do the work. They're professionals on this. They have experience with this. All these administrative duties, how to send out paychecks, yeah, how to uh, enforce laws and things like that the government, that all these agencies do have still to happen. Yeah? Just have to happen in a different way that is now in uh, compliance with the so-called leader. You only have to have one person in the department that can report up the chain that people are not cooperating. That's all you need.
Yep, yep, yep.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, the 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 work that they're doing in infiltrating and managing pieces of the government, it's just really scary, really scary. And the most recent high news item was the shooting at the CDC in Georgia, and the people working there doing good, honest work now are afraid because Bobby Kennedy Jr. and this president has caused a lot of suspicion against those people, and
Yep.
it's uh, we got to do stuff. We got to go to the streets and make podcasts and
Yep.
call your congressman and all those things.
Oh, you
So
keep doing this. Put them on notice. Yeah, there's nothing you can do to stop them
yeah,
directly, but that's why I am hopeful. Yeah, that in this country we're going to come out better than Germany did at the time.
yeah.
Germany was
Well,
used to democracy. Democracy here has a high value as a tradition, and people of all ages. I was amazed about this when the No Kings demonstration, the protest march. How many people of my age group and older, yeah, are on the
yeah.
street?
Yep, yep, yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the 2026 election is closer than you think, and just really critical.
Well, they will find ways to try to twist that. Like an example that when we talked about the election or the vote for the Enabling Act in Germany,
Yeah.
one thing that the Nazis did, they posted the SR, that's the SA, that's their own party police around the building, and they were present in the chambers during the vote. So there were live people there looking at us. So if you don't cooperate, here are the guys who can beat you up.
Ah,
Now try imagine a system in 1920 and next year for the midterm elections where the ICE or or similar people, call it ICE, yeah, are being sent to the polling stations to make sure that everything is okay and that no unregistered voters vote.
yeah,
What effect will that have on the election?
yeah. You're right. Yep, yep, yep. We have to keep up the fight. So I'm going to close this out, and I think when I stop this, our connection's going to go. So
Okay.
if you have any follow-up questions for me or comments, you can give me a call. And this will take actually probably 20 minutes to process, and then I'll have Liam, my student assistant, put the heading, and the ending that I do on all my podcasts, and I'll let you know when we're ready to post it. So
Okay.
I want to thank you so much for spending time with me, and maybe we'll need to expand on this again sometime. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate the invitation, definitely, and I like to. I think I feel the need to talk about this, yeah, and offer my my insights into though I have not lived it by myself, but it's a different time when you grow up in a country that has that history. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, thank you, and for my regular listeners, all 20 of you, I didn't prepare a quote for the end of this today, so we'll have to do it without my traditional ending quote. So, thanks again for coming, and I hope that those of you who watch will find this interesting and informative. Take care, everyone.